Good morning, everyone. So nice to have you here. Welcome to the Morongo Basin Conservation Association's 57th annual meeting. Wow, started in 1969. First, I'd like to say we acknowledge and thank the longest inhabitants of the desert lands for which MBC advocates, the Cahuilla, Chemehueve, Mojave, Serrano nations who have lands in California and Arizona. We pay respect to their people, their ancestors, elders, and relatives, past and present, and emerging. Through our mission, we honor and support their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. To begin with, I'd like to thank the people who really contributed to making this happen. First of all, to the town of Yucca Valley for the use of their facility here, which is just great. In particular to Edward Grantham, who has been so helpful in getting our technology working today. So, yes, Stacy. And I'd also like to thank Terry Quinn and her helper Bobby, who have been putting the food together for us today, doing the catering. So enjoy it. There'll be a break for a quick snack, and then after the presentation here today, there'll be some lunch that's ready to be served. And I'd also like to thank Bob Stevenson, who's recording today's meeting, and we'll post it up so everyone will be able to see this afterwards. And I'd also like to thank our volunteers, Helen Jong, thanks very much, Darlene Felges, and Vicki McConnell, who helped organize and get things here ready for us today. And I'd also like to thank especially all of our members and people that are here today to make this, it's so great to see everyone here in person, having lived through that COVID thingy when it was all remote. It's nice to see people in person. We've got a few tables here of people that have some presentations, some information that I'd like to encourage you to visit. I'd like you to visit astrophysics, Copper Mountain College student, Brian Gutierrez, who's got a project, a tortoise guzzler project at Copper Mountain College. He's in the back area here. Next to him is 90 miles from Needles. Chris Clark has got information on his DAM website, Desert Advocacy Media Network website, and really good to see him here. We have the California Native Plant Society, who has information. Spider Falk is back there ready to give you information on that. And then we have Nicholas Holmes, our main presenter a little later, who is here with his information on Holmes Eco Supply, his business in Joshua Tree. We'll be able to give you good products and information about it. I'd also like you to encourage everyone to visit MBCA's table up here on the left, which we've got some handouts on there. And it's also a share table, so if you've got brought any literature you'd like to share or literature you'd like to pick up, it's over there ready for you to take advantage of that. And at this point, I understand that Tom O'Kee has a announcement, and so Tom, if you'd like to come on up here and give us the scoop. Here.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I'm Tom O'Kee. You may know us from our astronomy theater, and I just wanted to let you know that we've lost our lease on our theater and we're moving out. And there's a combination of things. We're kind of getting older. We're not finding young people who want to come and man the telescope so readily these days for whatever reason. But I just want to thank everybody here who's been supportive over all these years. We broke ground out there in 2009 as a little group of astronomers who decided we didn't want to see people hurt or trampling the park when we used to meet at Hidden Valley out there once a month on the new moon. And for years, we met as the Andromeda Society, which, of course, pretty much everybody's gone now. It was a group of elderly people when I started, and that was 20 years ago this year. And so, to all of you, I just want to say thanks. I'm not sure what's next, but we'll keep looking up, eh? Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Are there any other announcements, general announcements people might like to make at this point? Take it.
Hi. Anybody who lives in Joshua Tree who pays their water bill to the Joshua Basin Water District, I have a petition to sign asking the state to help us out with funding on the chromium-6. I don't know, David, I don't know, or Stacy, what do you call it? It's there. The state has mandated that we have to fix the chromium-6 issue. So, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And so, and yes, and then also the timeline is way too short. So, another district has requested both of these things, and a small district like ours, and the state approved it or is going to help out. So, the issue is a large district like DWP in LA it's large customer-wise, but it's small geographic, and we're the opposite. So per customer, it's going to cost people in LA not nearly what it's going to cost us, as the cost will be, passed down to the customer. So that's what the petition is for, and it's due on the 30th, I believe. So if you have friends who live in the district, please let them know there's a petition to sign, and that's it. And Pat for Congress.
I don't know if this is kosher to do because we're at a nonprofit. Just that I have a petition for Pat Wallace to get on the ballot for Congress, and I'd be happy to talk with you all individually about his qualifications because I don't think this is the correct forum for that. Okay, so come see me and come see Pat.
Hi, I'm Kaz Newman. I'm just letting y'all know that next Saturday we'll be cleaning up Giant Rock. And this is our 11th year of looking after the Mother Stone 3 times a year. So it's during King of the Hammers. We're excited about bringing understanding across all the different users. So please join us. We're playing Elephant Snot next Friday afternoon at 3. And then we collect trash and blast off the graffiti 9 to noon. All the volunteers get lunch on Saturday afternoon. Thank you. Giant Rock, 3 o'clock on Friday for Elephant Snot application prep for graffiti. People can camp out with us too, Friday night. And then Saturday we start at 9 and we work until about noon. And then we have pizza and salad at about 12:30. Thank you.
Okay, for those of you who have heard about the 29 Palms solar farm that wants to be put in to the west of the city, there is a petition that has been put up on Facebook called No on Solar Farm. It's a disaster. It'll be just another big well of dirt that can be released and put as dust into the air, which we don't need. So if you're interested and you're on Facebook, please look at No on Solar Farm. Look for that. Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone for, I'm great, we're so pleased we're able to have this venue for people to be able to be making these kinds of announcements here. It's just great. Well, at this point, I'd like to introduce the members of our board. This being our annual meeting, this is the time when a new slate of officers is elected, and we sort of announce that here we are again, another year. So I'm Steve Bardwell. I'm the president of MBCA, and we've got our new board member, Aaron Flanagan, is our vice president, and great, Aaron. Oh, good. Thank you, Aaron. And Bob Wald is our treasurer over here, sitting behind the cash box. Our secretary, Lorraine Turk, right here, very good. Our past president, Sarah Kennington. Stacy Doolittle back in tech. Stacy does a lot of our social media, does an excellent job on that. Janet Johnston. And Arch McCullough, who is also the president of the Mojave chapter of the California Native Plant Society. David Fick is our historian. David has been involved with MBCA for years and knows the history of everything, which is just great. Likewise, with Pat Flanagan, who's a longtime MBCA board member. And we have a new board member here, Joanie Tremblay, who's just joined, studying horticulture at UCLA and desert conservation studies at in Palm Desert. So we're really delighted to have her involved with this. And unfortunately, our board member Brian Hammer, who has been instrumental in so many of our projects and creating documentation and maps, he's not here. He's got the bug. So, but I'm so pleased to be working with our. Bob, you're being asked to stand up again. Bob Wall, very good. I'm so pleased to be working with this board as we are working for our mission. Our mission is to advocate and educate for a healthy desert environment which nurtures wildlands and supports our communities and rural character, economic well-being, and culture. MBCA, we have a working board that contributes so much to fulfilling our mission. These people don't just sit on their hands. MBCA continues to be very engaged in pursuit of our mission by continuing our efforts to promote desert-wise living. This year will mark the 15th year of our Desert-Wise Living Landscape Tour, which will be happening on the April 19th of this year. And it will be in-person landscapes that will be made available for touring. And we're so pleased to be able to fund that, primarily with the support of our local water agencies. I'll sort of start roughly from west to east, starting with the Golden State Water Company, which is in Morongo Valley, the High Desert Water District, and we're pleased to have Scott McCone, president of the board, here with us today. The Bighorn Desert View Water Agency up in the Landers area. The Joshua Basin Water District, and we're pleased to have two members of the board of directors on our board and present with us here today. And the 29 Palms Water District, and the Mojave Water Agency, the overall broker for water of this area. Our tour highlights water-wise landscapes and the importance of the use of native plants. Conserving water is always in season, and the world is approaching water bankruptcy. Having seen some recent articles in the Guardian, some studies, it's getting to be acute. We're all aware of the upcoming negotiations on the Colorado River water supply in California, uses, they're first in line, first in use, so they have a huge allocation of water, and whether or not they'll be able to, California will be able to have all of this, and what happens to the other states, it's a big negotiation that's underway on that. And today's presentation on the use of greywater is part of the solution that's going to be very important to address these water shortages. In addition to conserving water, MBCA continues to inform and provide workshops on the idea of conserving and preserving our dark night skies. Over the last year, we've done several, we have regular inquiries from people about complying with the light trespass ordinance that our supervisor, Don Rao, was really instrumental in helping us get that passed. So we're very pleased with her efforts in that regard. Shield your lights and point them down, don't point them up. And contrary to opinion, having a nice bright light in your face doesn't make you more safe. It can make you less safe because you can't see beyond the glare of what's happening. MBCA is pleased to continue offering scholarships to graduating high school seniors. We've got over the last few years, this began with a bequest that we received from Ruth Dennison, who had the Dhamma Dena Buddhist Center out in North Joshua Tree. And that sort of instigated our issuing scholarships, and we're continuing it at this point with a woman's 3 scholarships, a woman's STEAM scholarship, a conservation scholarship, and a scholarship in the honor of the late Steve Riemann. In addition, over the last several years, MBCA has facilitated and sponsored field trips for 8th grade students. Janet will be talking a little bit about that very soon. MBCA board members continue to be involved with the Inland Desert Working Group that strives to highlight the importance of the desert within the state's efforts to address climate change impacts. The desert is like an inverted rainforest with much of its growth underground. There's a lot of carbon in the desert that people don't recognize. And so that's something we've really been, Arch McCullough and Pat Flanagan have been very involved in that. As this year, MBCA is going to offer a candidates forum because this upcoming midterm election is such an important election. It's important that an informed electorate be part of the decisions that are being made. So we intend to have a candidates forum to be able to show what different candidates, their positions are, so voters will be able to make intelligent choices to be able to contrast different views of different candidates when they make their decision. MBCA's mission is to advocate for the healthy desert, drives us to be aware of the growing development pressures and to encourage sustainable development within our unique basin. Let's take a look here. If we could go on to the next slide, Stacy, and I thought this is, and perhaps drop the lights here so we can see this a little bit. Oh, good. So, yeah, here we go. This is kind of starting from, let me get a different microphone here. Yeah, there we are. Starting from the up towards our friends in Lucerne Valley, I just put in a few things here that I'll just go through this very quickly. The Sienna 2 solar project, an 1,900 acre project that we'll speak about in a few minutes. BIG, which stands for the Barstow International Gateway, which would be a 4,200 acre approximately rail distribution center. The idea is to take shipping containers from the Port of LA, put them on a train, send them out to Barstow, from where they would then be distributed. So it would be a potential of being, of course, Highway 247 would provide a nice quick shortcut from there all the way down to, for instance, that gigantic warehouse, Amazon Fulfillment Center down in Desert Hot Springs. So it brings up the potential of a lot more traffic on Highway 247. And there is this development called Rancho Lucerne, which is something that's been kind of lying dormant for a while, but this last year they were trying to kick it into gear. It would be a 2,500 home development in Lucerne Valley. And it remains to be seen what's going to happen on that, but it once again has the potential of adding a lot of traffic to Highway 247. Let's the Eco-Dome, we can kind of skip over that. That's a small development, 5 acres or 2.5 acres just up from the Integratron, a little camping site being proposed within the RL zone. There is the landing. This is a 5-acre parcel on Belfield Road, and the developers on here are very interested in doing a very eco-friendly and sustainable development. They, in fact, they're not able to be here today, but they intend to be using Greywater and have stated that within their application on this thing. It would be a 35, I think it is, room hotel with a restaurant and a little small general store there. Flamingo Blossom, a small 14-unit development just up from Lucerne, from La Copine. Joshua Tree Camp, this has been on the books for a while, a small 2.5 acre, 4-unit development once again, kind of shoehorning in as under the RL land use issues. It's really more of a small hotel being put into it is a more commercial type development within an RL zone. Santorini Villas, that's been a development it's 80 acres being proposed to be subdivided into 2.5 acre parcels. The concern is, and it looks like it's being marketed as a way to gain visas, EB4 visas. If you invest a certain amount of money in the country, then you can get a pass on that. Let's see, E-Group Solar. This is the one that Pat was just talking about with the, it's a 184 acre, I believe, development that they're trying to put in. Would take a lot of grading, a lot of disturbance, and the potential of creating a lot of dust. As you can see, it's pretty much straight upwind from 29 Palms. Off there to the east further, Amboy Resort. This is a very interesting project that's gotten the tentative go-ahead, I believe, from the city of 29 Palms. It's going to be a 3D printed resort, so each of the cabins will be 3D printed, which is kind of an interesting technology. Bottom right there, we have the Reset Hotel, which is an ongoing development that's I think it's 65 rooms, I think, thereabouts. The Ofland development, Ofland Resort, a resort that's 152 acres, I think, with 100 units on there. It's been challenged by the Indian Cove neighbors and also by the Center for Biological Diversity for some deficiencies within their environmental documents, among other things. Panorama Springs, this is an interesting one. This is this works out to an 18-room boutique hotel that consists of a conglomeration of short-term rentals. They're all being rented as a unit. So you can find them when you go look on the web, and you're very, kind of luxe kind of development. Just very close to the Cactus Club, which is something that was presented to the the proposal for it, it's not proceeded too far yet. MBCA provided some scoping comments on it, and the Center for Biological Diversity wrote a letter, scoping letter too, sort of questioning the thoroughness of their environmental documents. This would be on a 5-acre, I think it's like 4.71 acre parcel, 20 units, and I think there's 3 restaurants, a bar. I mean, it's a super dense development right on the highway, and real questions about its environmental analysis and how it went. Then you can see that circle there. That is a very rough approximation of that blue circle of what would be the potentially a Joshua Tree sewer district. And this was something that back in early December of last year, the Board of Supervisors passed on the consent calendar that would call for the creation of a special district for creating a sewer in this area. So something that really good size expenditure money. I think $7 million for that study. Quite a bit of money just to be saying we're going to do it without. We wish there'd been a little more engagement with the community on that. AutoCamp is, to their credit, AutoCamp, they followed the bouncing ball. They're in the right zone. They did all the proper documentation, and it's up and operating development as it is there, in place there now. Lovemore Ranch, that is something that MBCA filed a appeal of the approval of that, and subsequently the Joshua Tree Village neighbors, a grouping of community members, have filed a lawsuit on that, and that is in the works. So it's stopped now, and negotiations are ongoing on that. And then there's Joshua Tree Resort, which is a part of this has been sort of very stealthy, not clear. There was a 40-acre piece just right at Sunset on the north side of Sunset and Highway 62 that was rezoned, or an application to rezone it into, or shift the zoning so there's realign the zoning areas so there's now more commercial and less multifamily. There's concern that it's within, David brought up some interesting points on this, right within a floodplain, and it becomes a real question. There's some architectural plans that have been provided for a rather extensive resort there, but that was never revealed or discussed. The Center for Biological Diversity, once again, is questioning that, and we agree with them, is saying this has the potential of being a piecemeal of CEQA. When we get approval for one little part of it, and then go ahead and do the other part. It should rather be thought of all as one big piece. And lastly is the Pioneer Town Motel expansion on 2.5 acres, adding 47 rooms of housing, a spa, a horseback riding facility, it's some retail, a rather very significant size development for small pioneer town. So it's, I thought it's just sort of important to put this all out there so one can start to see about the potential cumulative impacts of all this development within the basin, because it's potentially a big deal. David has somebody he'd like to hear.
He wants to ask about.
Oh, yeah, and I had included on there Sunfair 42, and this is a development which is a motocross development out on Sunfair Road that is operating now. It's been constructed. It was not constructed and permitted to have, and it's in operation. It was not constructed to have a motorcycle dirt track there. It's being considered now as for a minor use permit. It should really be considered for a conditional use permit, something that would be a little more, we believe, a little more thorough analysis is warranted for it. It's using a tremendous amount of water to mediate dust. creates a lot of noise. The lighting is, doesn't, it's not in sync with the light trespass ordinance. So it's really something that we think needs some real attention and examination on that. So just wanted to just sort of throw this out to say this is, and look at, I think it's interesting. Look at where all the development is happening. It's all in an area where there's not infrastructure for, there's no sewer where most of these things are happening. Well, in fact, nothing. The only area up here that has a wastewater treatment system is Yucca Valley. And you can see there's no development shown in Yucca Valley. So it's all being pushed outboard to areas that don't have the infrastructure. And that's something that really is contrary to what the countywide plan, the basis on which the countywide plan was passed in 2019 was there was going to be, or 2020, there was going to be very limited growth out in this area. And we're seeing really kind of the complete opposite, especially with COVID, everything went nuts. And it's still continuing. There's a tremendous push for development out in this area. So with that, let's go ahead and switch on to our next slide, if we would, please. This is something that, a slide that our director Brian Hammer put together. And the pink dots are the areas, if you can scroll over to the right, Stacy, to see the overall, you can see the legend here. The pink are really super critical areas of, they're irreplaceable essential wildlife connectivity corridors. Pay no attention to locations of projects that we've shown on there. This was an old slide. But if you would, please go back to the left, Stacy, so we can see Morongo Valley. So that in the bottom left that's the main corridor that would sort of connect Sand to Snow to the San Bernardino Mountains. Really critical. Last year at our annual meeting, Gary Hund made a presentation about an application being made to create wildlife crossings there. There's a lot of concern about some environmentally or ecologically distinct populations of mountain lions on each side of Highway 62. They aren't able to intermix. And we're seeing signs of a lot of problems from the lack of diversity within the species. So the hope is that there'll be some funding made available to create a wildlife crossing in that location. Look at Rimrock. Isn't that interesting? Rimrock is a real hot spot. I think that must be kind of leading up through. This is such a gross scale, I can't really dial in on it, but it's probably up through Pipes Canyon as part of it, and Pipes Wash. So important things to think about with all this development, what's that going to do to wildlife that is under such stress at this point, really. We want to be careful about that. So the other thing with all these developments, of course, is, and we'll talk about this in a bit, is it's great to have this economic development. We like having, we need to have some vitality for our economy here. Where do the workers for all these new developments, where do they live? Do they have to commute down to Indio or La Quinta or, God knows, Thermal? Some of these workers would have to, in order to find housing that they can afford to live in, they'd have to go far, far away. And these are things we think really warrant consideration with the approval of any of these developments. You slip on to the next one here. So on this next Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors will hear an appeal that the Morongo Basin Conservation Association made in conjunction with groups from the town of Lucerne Valley, or the community of Lucerne Valley. This is a huge development. Let's switch to the next slide, if you would, please. A huge development in the little red there. And One of the things that we had been commenting upon this for quite some time, Pat Flanagan, Brian Hammer had really been working quite a bit in terms of the dust potential that such a development could bring, as well as just the disruption to the community as a whole. So we'd been aware of that. After the Planning Commission hearing on October 23rd of last year, just within, I think we had a 10-day window within which to decide whether or not to file an appeal. 5 days into it, or 7 days into it, we received word. If you can scroll up to that top right there, Stacy, and kind of show that certificate for the Lucerne, for the High Desert State Scenic Highway. So Highway 247 is now designated, officially designated by Caltrans as a scenic highway. This is something that has not been publicized. The local radio station made a brief report on it, but it has not been widely publicized, and it was not made available to the Planning Commission. So this was a September 4th. The Planning Commission hearing was on October 23rd. So about 50 days later, and the Planning Commission was not made aware of the fact that this was a scenic highway, which is, you know, this project has been acknowledged as being not mitigatable for the aesthetic impacts. However, it really should have been discussed and presented to be able to be talked about with everyone. So look at now what this scenic highway is going to, you'll be losing many miles of scenic highway. Their board member, Sarah Kennington, was very involved in the effort to make this a designated scenic highway, as well as local Pioneer Town resident Sarah Fairchild as a landscape architect analyzing it very much. So it's really very concerning. We're filing an appeal based on the dust potential. We're very concerned that this might create a lot of dust. We're concerned about the aesthetic impacts of it. We're concerned about the cumulative impacts of it in terms of it's going to, along with Sienna, is also going to that little red dot that you see on the blue highway up to the top left there. That is the calcite substation, which would be a Southern California Edison facility that would facilitate a lot of other or potential solar developments there. So many that our analysis showing it could be approximately 10 square miles of solar that could be facilitated up in the Lucerne Valley. So it would have a tremendous impact. It would fundamentally change the character of the Lucerne Valley as a whole. So something that something to keep an eye on that. We'll be making a presentation on Tuesday. I encourage anyone, if you've got the Bob Burke Center will be open on next Tuesday for public comments. We're encouraging people, if possible, to go to Lucerne Valley and express your opinions about this. Yeah. Oh, they moved. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, great. So so it's not at the government center. So that's good. It's at the community center. So hopefully it'll have a more stable Wi-Fi connection there. In Joshua Tree, yes. Yeah, at the Joshua Tree Community Center. Well, with that, I'd like to, during the last, since we had our housing summit of a couple of years ago, we've become very involved in housing. And our board member, Janet Johnston's been a real key on that. She has a couple of things to talk about that, and as well as some of our educational efforts. Oh, yes, and go ahead and show that. Here we go.
take our internal voice, right, and put pen to paper. And the idea is that we're really taking time out of our days in order to tell us different stories, right? Maybe what's going on in your life, what's going on in the world, what's going on in the environment. And so what we're going to do today, we're going to spend about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to ask you guys to hop up in, some of these rocks. I don't want you to get too high up, right? But I want you guys to get a little, spread out a little bit. And I want you to take some individual time to just consider what you have seen today. I want you to tell a story, right? And the whole goal is that I want you to tell a story to yourself about what it is that you've seen, how you're feeling, maybe what you've observed, right? And then we're going to come back together and we're going to talk about it. Is that okay? Who am I here with? What have I seen? Where am I? When did I see it, right? These are opportunities to get some of our creative juices flowing. Oh. Experience. Can somebody volunteer and tell me a little bit about it?
Grounded. Grounded.
Grounded. Good word choice. I like that. Very grounded. All right, talk to me. How did you feel?
Really like peaceful and calming.
Okay.
You could really think in your thoughts and the quietness.
Yeah? That's good. So, I mean, is this maybe an exercise that you could see yourself doing not here, maybe just at home or in the park or something like that? Yeah? And so sometimes that means taking some time out of your day and maybe creating a ritual or a ceremony around, you know what? I don't need to talk to anybody else, but I just need to talk to myself. Need to be for anybody else but yourself, okay? And we don't have to, but I'm just curious. Yeah, that's we got to volunteer. Oh my goodness, great. Oh. Please, let's hear it. I would love to.
I see rocks, boulders, the stepping stones of life, the thought, the silence that controls my mind. I feel the warmth of the sun on my body as I see its light shine through the shadow of my paper. I feel at peace, calm, like all my fears have disappeared. I feel the wind brushing against my skin as the chills spread. This place, the view, puts me at ease as if this is where I was meant to be, outside, free. The streams of white in the sky above the rocks where I see my friends. The question of what I want with my life roams in my mind. It feels like the answer is here, somewhere. I want to find it, I need it.
Wow!
I got it on tape.
That was incredible. You said for our volunteers. I'm gonna give it for you too.
Awesome, you guys.
You guys did a great job. And
You just
again,
made it all worth it right there. I know. Woo. Yeah, and that was my son put that video together. I did the terrible footage, but that was, oh, there you go. Is that good? Okay, we got it now. So this was the field trip to Section 6, which is also a Desert View Conservation Area, and that was one of our fearless volunteers, Terrence Latimer. And we have a few other people that have volunteered at our field trips in here. Y'all raise your hands. A couple here. Spider, yeah. She deserves an award to take a bunch of 8th graders on a hike in the desert. I think Lisa's here too. There she is. She did the same thing. And you never know what kind of group you're going to get. One year they might be little, interesting, and then the next year they're like this. So it's very rewarding. So basically we have 2 field trip programs that we run. They're both with La Contenta Middle School and the 8th graders. 8th grade because they're going to be heading to high school and thinking about their future. It's also an age that seems to get kind of forgotten. Everyone thinks high school, elementary school. What about middle school? They're actually like really, really interesting age. So we pick them up, or they arrive on a bus to Section 6, which is Desert View Conservation Area, and we take a group on a hike. We have a home base, and we had the journaling activity that Terrence led. We had Groundworks Arts doing an art activity, and we had a bouldering demonstration. We had High Desert Nature Museum talking about scat, and we had Dr. Paul Delaney, who did the tortoise survey. That was Brian's professor, I believe, at CMC, and Albert Garcia. And there's a display over here. You can go check it out. Albert's actually a neighbor, and he named the mountain there Cerro de la Silla. So we tell the kids about that. We show them maps, because they don't often see maps to kind of orient where they are. And when they're on the hike, they get to see a rock climbing demonstration. Then they keep walking a little bit further, and lo and behold, there's a national park ranger, because they cross from the county land into the national park land. And they do a little like tracking demonstration there too. They can also see Copper Mountain College from there. So that's kind of the key of where they are. And we talk, of course, about the tortoise preserve that is at Section 6. The second field trip program, I'm actually on the bus. I picked the kids up. Terrence stepped in at the last minute last year because we had a rain day, so we had to combine it all into one day. And we do a Jobs of Joshua Tree tour. So we pick them up from La Contenta and we drive all the way around. You can see the route down there. We go by the fire department, the preschool, the ambulance, the library. I talk about Coyote Corner and how a certain grandson of somebody over there is studying, or had studied, was it fish wildlife biology up in Humboldt. And the reason I'm saying that is you can do anything. I mean, you're in the desert and you're going to study fish wildlife biology. And here's, how you do these things. So at fire department, you can do career technical education at CMC plus MUSD, Morongo Unified School District. They also have a really strong program. So we do the tour, we go up by the hospital, the courtyard, we drop half of them off at Harrison House Arts and Ecology Center. We have also talked about water systems because we can see how the washes cross, and you can see the dry lake bed and all the water infrastructure from Joshua Basin Water District, which we also stopped by on the tour. And they have a map of all this, and they're seeing what's around them, and that's what we're trying to do. It's like you guys are around this all day, just like look at what's here. And look at all the opportunities that are here just in Joshua Tree. And this applies in all these different locations. And here's a path to travel that you can, access these. So we have a career technical education, give them a quick PowerPoint at Copper Mountain College. And Copper Mountain College also describes their programs. So they get a real physical, there's all these possibilities, and this is where I can go learn to do these things. Okay, so now I'm gonna switch to housing. So as you can see, our mission is to support the environment and our community's well-being. As Steve said, we have been involved in many issues that intersect with housing, including our concerns with a large number of short-term rentals, displacing our renters, and making homes unavailable and unaffordable for families. I think I did this right. Is that right? Yeah, I did it. So 3 years ago, on January 21st, 2023, we held our basin-wide housing meeting with representatives from Yucca Valley, 29 Palms, the county, the school district, the Marines, and the national park, as well as many of our local nonprofit organizations. And I was just sort of getting to know the service providers at that point to discuss these issues of where we are at that point. So it's 3 years later, where are we at now? So last year, I got elected onto the East Desert Regional Steering Committee by the service providers who attend the meetings. I had been going for a number of years. There are 4 government representatives and 4 service providers on the committee, and we, MBCA, are considered advocates. So what exactly is the East Desert Regional Steering Committee? Slide you've been waiting for. We are an advisory committee to the San Bernardino City and County Continuum of Care Board. This is an officially designated body by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, commonly known as HUD. There are over 400 COCs across the country and 44 in California. The San Bernardino County Homeless Partnership is essentially the COC board, the COC membership, which is all the service providers, plus the County Office of Homeless Services, which we affectionately call OHS, who is the administering entity. And Marcus Dillard there, he is the chief of the OHS. So since our county is so large, we are split into 5 regions, and we are the East Desert region. So our steering committee makes recommendations to the COC board. So what exactly does the COC do? I'm going to read this part. The COC board is responsible for building a county-wide network to connect housing and supportive services to the homeless, securing funding for housing programs and projects, and overseeing how the funding is used. The COC board is comprised of representatives from cities, the county, and the nonprofit agencies that work together to create policies and ensure accountability and results in meeting the county's goals in addressing homelessness. That was a statement from the county. The county itself holds and administers the funds that come from HUD as well as come from the state. So we also administer these HAP grants. The COCs, and again, this is every COC, are required to have the administrative entity, which is the OHS, a coordinated entry system, and you might have heard of 211. That's the number that you can call if you're looking for services, and that's Inland SoCal United Way. And they need to, every COC needs to have a homeless management information system, and this is like when you engage with a client, a person, you enter them into the system and you can track, the services that they're receiving, and that kind of puts them in line for housing, theoretically. And the COCs conduct an annual point in time count, which we just did on Thursday. Yeah. So as you can see, there's a complex system with many, many moving parts. To tackle this complexity, MBCA has founded and financially supports the Morongo Basin Housing Solutions Team, which we refer to as the working group. We meet once a month, and its team members are in contact on a frequent basis, and I am the facilitator of that team. So we are in phase 1. First, we got started. That took a lot of effort just to get the ball rolling, yes. So we've been meeting for almost a year at this point. I think we started in March. As you can see, there's an incredibly complex array of different populations, youth, families, veterans, seniors. There's a huge array of funding universes, I call them. There's the federal, the state, programs and criteria, data systems, agencies and nonprofits to understand, work with, and navigate. So what we are doing is we meet, we're networking and collaborating, we're looking at what we have and what we need. Then working with what we have to try and fill gaps while we plan for future projects. So each situation, when we run across somebody, exposes another gap to fill, and everything is changing on a daily basis. One day there's funding, the next day there's not funding, then the next day they put the funding back. So what we are currently doing is we're setting up a Discord communication server, which some of the youth in here might know about, for all the local providers to connect to. So if there's a person in a situation, the case manager or the street outreach team or the citizen who's connected, who's a provider, can alert others to ask for assistance or resources or check shelter bed availability. So like the Discord's like a channel that the gamers all use. You have these different channels you can tag into. So we'll have like a shelter bed channel. This person is an emergency situation channel, and people are like alerted. So you might alert one nonprofit or one agency that, oh, they need transportation, and then you look over here, what beds are available. So that's the idea there. So it's basically one central point of communication versus a flurry of text messages all over the place as it is now. So we are developing a directory website, thanks to Eric for getting it started, where the providers each have access to their own page that they will keep updated with current programs. So the Discord's sort of internal to the providers, and the website will be for the providers to use as a resource, but that should also be public as well, or where you think it might be. So moving through all the things that we're trying to do here, as an example of corralling resources into one central location, there's just people everywhere doing a lot of different things. We developed a perpetual food distribution, location, and date calendar. This will eventually be on the website and hopefully will be updated by the providers themselves as times and locations change frequently. This is just an example of something that can be done without a huge amount of funding, so we're trying to do it. So but the big need now across the community, the big need now is eviction prevention, keeping people in their homes by helping with rent or utility payments. Unfortunately, this doesn't really get the attention and it doesn't necessarily get the funding. So at the moment, most of the nonprofits do not have this funding available, or it's for a limited certain group of people to utilize. Oops, what's happening there? Am I doing that? Not sure why it's doing that. Okay, and we had great things happen this year. One is that WEA, which is Wellness Equity Alliance Street Medicine Team, has started coming up the hill to attend to our unhoused community members out on the street and in the washes. They're here 2 days a week, and it's a young group of enthusiastic healthcare workers, and they just get out there and they connect with people and do great work with like wound care and things like that. Another is that we are now connected with the Inroads remote desert team who come here about 1 day a week. Marco is with the Department of Behavioral Health. He's a substance abuse counselor. Paul is the public health nurse. Neil is with Adult Protection Services, and he used to live here locally. And Deputy Justin is new, and he is with the Sheriff Department. Deputy Pat has just left the team. So we are in contact with them about specific people, various programs, resources, or anything we can do to support their work. And they have a lot of good information and experience, so it's working in both directions. Like the WIA team, they are out there in the desert, like out there, and they travel as far as Trona and Needles. And hopefully we're all going to be on Discord together once we get ourselves a bit better organized. We're getting there. So there are many individuals out in the community doing street outreach, mostly in 29 Palms, sometimes in Joshua Tree and Yucca Valley. Jen and Shane of Act in Kindness and Tanya and Will Maddox all go out on a daily basis to feed folks. They do more than that and offer comfort and true support on many levels. In Wonder Valley, there's a Set Free Church that has a shelter program for men, and I believe they also do street outreach. And in Joshua Tree, which I was at for the point in time count, the Way Station, which offers daily meals during the week for many people, whether they're housed or not. There's also many churches and other individuals have food distribution or clothing distribution that happens weekly or monthly. So there's another group called We Reach Out, which has an office in Yucca Valley. It is different than Reach Out Morongo. They offer medically assisted treatment programs, or MAT programs, in partnership with doctors for those that are trying to reduce their substance use. They also sponsor the Morongo Basin Community Coalition, which many of the working group, including the Morongo Basin Healthcare District, are involved with. One program is a monthly shower event at a few different locations in 29 Palms. Community Action Partnership drives up with its shower trailer, and various agencies are there with resources, including Transitional Assistance Department, Pacific Clinics, Valley Star. Reach Out Morongo has a van that goes and picks people up from various locations. It's the same van they use for the seniors. Picks up from locations and brings them to the shower site. Starlight Inn in 29 Palms, Winging It, and Alamo Laundry have all graciously offered their locations for the event, and Winging It has even provided meals for folks. And those that are in the building world will be, how does that huge trailer get down the hill with all that water? Well, we get it pumped out. So there's a pumping truck that comes and pumps it out before they go back down the hill, in case you're curious. So there is a Hopeful Horizons Clubhouse in Yucca Valley. This is a daytime drop-in program for adult clients. There's showers, laundry, and meals. People have to sign up for the programs, though, and that's through Pacific Clinics. Now, this was all free, but with all the funding changes that have happened, I think now, unfortunately, it has to go through insurance, so I have to kind of follow up on that. But that, as far as I know, this used to be Santa Fe Social Club, you guys might have heard about in the past. They're now in a new location, and they're next door to the Valley Star Tay One Stop. And this is a similar daytime drop-in for transitional age youth, which is 16 to 25. They offer programs, support, meals, shower, and laundry. They also have a housing program for the youth with one of our local transitional housing providers, Molding Hearts. Molding Hearts also has contracts with probation and other agencies for housing. The CEO of Molding Hearts, Janet Johnston, is on the East Desert Regional Steering Committee with me, and as well as on the county COC board. So Morongo Basin Arch is another nonprofit. They also offer transitional housing locally. But that's kind of it for housing that we have here. Another nonprofit is Daniel Ballou. He actually was at our meeting 3 years ago, and he's on the East Desert Regional Steering Committee, and he's the founder and executive director of Rescue and Residence. This is a program for Marines who have just retired from duty and are re-entering civilian life. They are trained to fix up old ambulances into their future residences. They can later take their skills and their homes with them to various job sites. I used to live out of my truck and car on job sites. That's what you do when you're in construction. And the image on the left is a concept for a dining center at their campus that they're developing in 29 Palms. So he's moving along. They're still in the early stages, but they're definitely making a lot of good progress. So that was kind of phase one and the different people involved in the working group and the regional steering committee and what's happening locally. This, I'm just going to just briefly tell you, we have phases that we're hoping to do in the future. We're kind of concurrently working on developing this central communications hub. This will be a future thing, and there will definitely be a collaboration between the agencies. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's a lot involved with it. And this would be a brick and mortar location that basically works to like connect everybody with the Discord, like taking up to another level on the website, and then also connecting with the county homeless management information systems and 211. Phase 3 of the plan is to develop the Housing Solutions Center. This would be more housing navigation and interaction with the landlords, developing relations with the housing providers. When folks go into housing, it's often good to follow up with them for 6 months or a year to work on their finances, make sure they can stay in the housing. They call it the 6-month cliff, where a lot of people might get housing. And then the program ends in 6 months, and then bam, they're not ready to keep it going themselves. So all that will hopefully happen in the Housing Solutions Center in hopefully the near future. And then phase 4, which again also happens concurrently, is project development. We have a really good example up in Victorville. They have a wellness center. It's larger scale than we would do here. What's great about it, they allow pets. They have a kennel as well, but people can have the pets in the room. And it's a non-congregate shelter, meaning people are basically in their own room or with a roommate. It's not like a large, auditorium with a bunch of beds. And that is turning out to be a very successful model, having that 6 months they can stay there, they have their own space, and they can work with programs and such to get them into housing. So the last thing I want to discuss is a bit of a reality check, and also something you can do today and ongoing to help with a very specific funding gap. So yes, I am fundraising right now. I need to explain there are multiple definitions of what homelessness is, depending what agency's doing the defining. For the school system, MUSD, they use the McKinney, well actually all the school systems in the state, they use a McKinney-Vento definition, and that means that students and families who are couch surfing, living in their car, or in a motel, or in a tent, are considered homeless. With that in mind, as of last school year, we had 488 students, I hate that number, 488 students struggling and are considered homeless in our school district. So on that table, I've got, and on the slide, you can see it's broken down by the different schools. And it is eye-opening, my son was at the high school and how many students were struggling that, he was in classes with. So 488 students at MUSD, that's 6.2% of the enrollment. And there's 28,164 in San Bernardino County. So 3 years ago, MBCA partnered up with First World and raised over $11,000 for the homeless students of MUSD. This flexible, accessible funding is critical for families. So what happens is, and this was all through the work we've been doing with the working group, we realized there was a common and recurring funding gap for families that happens locally. So some families will go to the Transitional Assistance Department and they are given a 16-night motel voucher from the TAD office, but they are not allowed to enroll in the Next Step program until the last day. So then we get the calls that, okay, this mom and 3 kids, one of which is special needs, it's going to be on the street, if we can't find funding because the next program, it's usually Friday when this seems to happen, isn't going to be able to pick them up for like 5 days. There was a mom in a car with an 8-year-old for 3 weeks in this sort of program gap. So this is a specific problem that has an attainable solution that we can do locally. So Wayne Hamilton is a longtime MUSD homeless liaison. That's an official role, and almost all the school districts have a homeless liaison, and they all meet, and he goes to a lot of conferences in DC and such, and across the state. And he was a founder of Morongo Basin Haven, which was actually the precursor to the East Desert Regional Steering Committee, and Morongo Basin Arch. He and his work team at MUSD have set up an independent nonprofit that can hold and administer funds for this bridge housing need so that families caught between programs can stay in the motel and not be, put back on the street or back into their car until the next program kicks in. And it is so much better for folks and way cheaper for society to help keep people in their homes or to rapidly rehouse them. The longer people are unhoused, the harder it is to get them back into housing. And a lot of people don't realize, and this is for like Jen and Shane who do all the street outreach, and they're talking with the folks all the time. I'm unfortunately kind of removed from that. But there's like a 30-day cycle. When people become unhoused, it's incredibly scary. So we do whatever we can to avoid that situation. But, as that month is going, I don't say deteriorate, but they withdraw and there's depression, and often that's when the substance abuse starts. They may not have already been using substances, but it may start once they become homeless. Because imagine if you were in that situation, you would get depressed as well. Mind you, everyone I have met is very good humor, funny, intelligent people. So it's not like everyone's walking around with their heads down. Depression is, we know what depression is. You may not actually see it, but it's there. So if you would like to help keep families in this situation housed, you can scan this QR code, and I've got flyers on the table to donate, and we have some flyers over there. And Wayne has his contact information if you want to talk to him directly. Also, if you're interested in attending the working group, just please let me know, and I'll add your email to the list. Thanks.
Wow, that's what I said. Incredible, Janet Johnston. Well, we're going to take a brief break here, and let's start again in about 5 minutes, and Nicholas will proceed with our keynote presentation. Thanks. Well, if everyone would please get back to your seat, we'll carry on with the show. So I'd like to, at this point, we'll like to hand this over to Nicholas Holmes, who will give us a presentation on how we can conserve some of our precious resource of water. So Nicholas, take it away. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. First off, I just want to send a quick thank you to Stacy Doolittle, who wrote the grant that made this possible for me to be here today and invited me to come today. So, wanted to say thank you to you, Stacy. And Steve, as he walks out the door, Steve and Stacy came and we had our initial meeting there at my shop and talked about me coming and doing this and the workshop to follow, the hands-on workshop as well. And Janet, who was instrumental in giving some great feedback on the presentation and helping me trim this down, because I normally do this presentation at permaculture trainings, permaculture courses, and it's about a 90-minute presentation. So they wanted me to bring this down to about an hour. And even my 90-minute presentation, it's jam-packed, and I'm usually running long. So I had to do a lot of editing and cutting and minimizing here to make this a little bit more brief. So I'll do my best to be more efficient and try to keep things rolling along. Just really quickly before I get started, just a little bit about myself and how I ended up doing work with Greywater. My background's in architecture. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and moved here 20 years ago in 2006 for one project in particular, design build project for my brother, thinking I was going to be here for 1 year. And it's now 20 years later, and I had no idea I was going to fall in love with this place and community. And here I am, presenting 20 years later on my work here in the community. And when I came here for that architecture project, I was designing houses that were utilizing sustainable systems. So harvesting the rainwater from the roof, harvesting the sun's energy to heat the homes, passive solar design, homes that were reusing their wastewater for the landscape. This was my passion, sustainable design and construction. But I found that there was nobody around here that was doing professional greywater system installations. And I realized if I wanted to do this, that I was going to need to do some more training and learn more myself. So in 2015, I ended up discovering Greywater Action, which is an organization. I have quite a few slides of theirs in this presentation that you'll see. Organization started by a woman named Laura Allen, who's also an author. I have a couple of books of hers here on Greywater that I highly recommend. And I went and took her 5-day training course out in LA. She was at the LA Eco Village. And it blew my mind. I thought I had learned a lot about Greywater already just from Art Ludwig's book, which is also back there, Create an Oasis with Greywater. It was the first book to hit the market in 1991 and opened the doors for a lot of people. And so I was self-taught just from books and hands-on, and then started teaching workshops. But in 2015, I heard about Greywater Action existing and went out and took their training course. And in 5 days, learned so much that I thought I had already had an understanding of, and went way deeper and took their certification course. And so now I'm a certified Greywater installer, and there's really not a lot of us out here. I'm the only one in this entire region until you get down closer to Los Angeles area or San Diego, Orange County. So there's really not a lot of people who've done this sort of work and gotten trained to do these systems professionally. So I encourage you, if it's something you're passionate about and you want to do more of it, please do. There's way more work, way more work to be done, especially in this greater region. As we know, water conservation is a big issue, and there's just not a lot of us who are doing this work. So I'm going to start off with a few icebreakers. I like to have a little trivia and invite anybody to yell out answers. Anything comes to mind. There's a few fun questions here to get started. So what's the average daily water use per person in the United States, including both inside the house and outdoors for irrigation? Any guesses? I heard 25, 60, 200, so pretty big range. Average of 156 gallons per person, inside and out. How many gallons of water per day does the World Health Organization recommend each person have to meet their basic health and sanitation needs? We're all over the place. 150. Oh, I went backwards. 13. So we're using on average about 156 gallons per person. Basic health and sanitation, 13 gallons. It's a pretty big jump there. How many gallons of water does it take to produce just one glass of orange juice? This is what we call virtual water, embodied water. Just to produce one glass of orange juice, how many gallons would you guess? 10? 45. 45 gallons for one glass of orange juice. According to the EPA, between 1.8 and 3.5 million Americans become ill every year from recreational contact with waters contaminated by what? E. coli is a good one, which is coming from raw sewage overflows. So that's a big problem. We have a lot of wastewater, and especially in urban areas, more wastewater than our systems are designed to handle, and we have overflows. So if we're able to take some of that water out of that system, this could prevent a lot of waterborne illnesses and issues that are coming up from this. How many billions, with a B, billions of gallons of raw or partially treated sewage flows into U.S. waterways each year? 6 billion? Yeah, way more than we want to think about. A lot. Last one. Who said whiskey is for drinking, water is for fighting over? Hey, we got some literary experts here. Okay, so here we are in California, and many of us are well aware of, water shortage is a big issue here in California. And looking at the cumulative drying, what's happening, this is including our groundwater in California, what's happened between 2002 and 2014 when these images were taken. It's a pattern that we've seen happening over and over, And water conservation is a major issue that we really need to pay a lot of attention to. And here we are in a region that's also tied to a dependence on water coming from further afoot. So we've got water from the Sacramento River Delta coming down, water from the Eastern Sierras, water from the Colorado River. Southern California, we have all these sources, and it also shows our vulnerability that so much of the water that's coming into Southern California is coming through an aging infrastructure, pipelines, aqueducts, things of this nature. And we've seen what's happened in just a few short years without enough rainfall and snowpack, how quickly the reservoirs that we have at surface can evaporate or can be used up to the point of literal evaporation. Dramatic changes, same sites, a few years apart. So the water that we have in those reservoirs is really a very short-term storage solution. And looking at our water usage, we talked about 150-something gallons per person in the US on average that we're using both inside the house and for outdoor irrigation. Worldwide, look where we stand compared to the rest of the world. So we're really using a lot of water here, and there's a lot of room for improvement. And looking at the household use, you can see by far the largest chunk of household water consumption is for outdoor irrigation on average. And from within the household use, there's numerous sources that we could reuse that water from. The shower, washing machine, faucets, tubs. Quite a bit could be used. And plants don't need purified water. In fact, they thrive on the water that's already been used and gone down the drain because there's nutrients in that water. So where does all that water go from our home fixtures after that water's gone down the drain? Where does it end up? Yeah, so here in this area, a lot of people, rural areas, it's a septic system. And where does that septic water go? It with gravity, percolates down. And what do we have under us here in the desert? Is our aquifers, our fresh water. So with these septic systems, we're literally pooping on our water. And when we have septic systems that have extra large contributions of water from showers and tubs and all the sources of the home, we're driving that contaminated water down into our water table. So if we can remove some of the water from those systems and have less water going in, we can prevent that plume from even contaminating in the first place. That was something that we saw. I remember there was a presentation that was at the Joshua Tree Community Center that was about our local aquifers. Was anybody here for that? I can't remember who the organization was that presented. Yes, USGS made a presentation about our local aquifers, and it was really interesting to see how distinct, Yucca Valley's aquifers were from Joshua Trees, separated by the fault lines. And one of the things they had talked about was the contamination that was happening in Yucca Valley once they were introducing water from the Sierras, importing water, because of the septic effluent that was in nearby housing developments, that when they would recharge, that recharge water was driving the contaminated water from the septic systems down into the aquifer and reducing the water quality. One of the big reasons why Yucca Valley was wanting to go onto sewer systems. So if it's not septic, then the other, in larger urban areas, the other area the water goes is to sewage treatment plants. This is one out in Victorville, Victor Valley Wastewater Reclamation Authority. I mean, this is a huge investment of energy to treat the wastewater. And there's a big chunk of that water that wouldn't even have to go to these places in the first place. And an even larger example, Los Angeles, the Hyperion Wastewater Treatment Plant. So what is gray water? There's sometimes some confusion about what gray water is and isn't, so I'm going to try to clarify that. So gray water is lightly used wastewater from our showers and baths, washing machines, sinks, air conditioning, condensate drains, evaporative cooler lines, even under sink water purification systems like reverse osmosis, and water softener systems as well, as long as it's a potassium water softener system, not the sodium. Gray water is never water from toilets. If you're looking at your home plumbing and trying to determine what's potentially gray water. If it's in a 3-inch large black pipe, that's black water. We can never tap into that. If it's in the 2-inch smaller black pipes or 2-inch or smaller, those are potential gray water sources. Gray water is water from washing machines. First and foremost, one of the easiest to attain, and in California, one that we can do legally without a building permit. And the amount of water we get from an old top loader could be substantial, 35 to 50 gallons at a time, or the new WaterWise ones down to about 12 gallons for some of the most efficient. Gray water is from showers and bathtubs, one of our best sources. The amount of soaps that's going down the drain and compared to the amount of water that we're using is pretty low, so low soap to water concentration. Gray water is water from sinks. In a broader sense, gray water is water from all sinks. In California, California has yet to legalize kitchen sink gray water. It's what a lot of gray water advocates, gray water enthusiasts call pre-legal. The word illegal implies that you're doing something wrong by using gray water from your kitchen sink, whereas the term pre-legal implies that the codes just really aren't up to date, aren't there yet. There's a lot of states around us in the West that have legalized kitchen sink gray water use. California just isn't one of them yet. There happens to be one committee in the legislature, a health committee that's anti-gray water, and every year that it comes to their committee, they shut it down. So we're hoping for that to change with time and kitchen sink gray water to be included in that classification in California. And gray water is never from toilets. So looking at the different sources that I just mentioned, in terms of quality, some of the best gray water quality sources we have is the water from the tubs and showers, like I mentioned, because there's very little soaps in compared to the amount of water. And also water from reverse osmosis purification systems. How many people have an RO system underneath their sink in their kitchen? For every, I think it's a 1-to-1, for every gallon of drinking water we get, there's a gallon that goes down the drain. That's a lot. So there's a good clean source right there. Could be used out in the garden. Air conditioning condensate's the same. In the summer, more humid times, it's just dripping, and we could utilize that water. Washing machine is a good source, and the reason it's not great is just because of the amount of soap that's mixed in with that water, and I'll talk a bit about what are appropriate soaps to use for gray water systems in a little here. And bathroom sinks, it's good, but can be problematic with shaving cream and toothpaste and body care products, so depending on how much, but still a good source. And the kitchen sink, I say, is in many cases a very good source. It's problematic in some cases with the lack of maintenance. And the main issue there is the oils and fats that we're washing down the drain from salad oils, food oils, meats, things like that. Those oils and fats can eventually clog the pores of the soil. So it just takes a bit more maintenance, about twice a year, to replace that mulch in the garden with fresh mulch. And lastly, swamp coolers and softened water. They're a little lower quality because of the mineral content that's in there, but the potassium chloride water softening systems have actually proved to be really good. Potassium's a plant nutrient, and I've seen plants thrive with those actually. A little bit about the history of the legality of gray water in California. Prior to 2009, it was not possible to have a legal gray water system, yet there were over 1 million existing gray water systems in use, mainly from washing machines. A lot of people have been doing that. After 2009, it's now possible to install many types of residential gray water systems legally, and in the case of the washing machine laundry landscape system, you don't even need a building permit for that as long as you're following a prescriptive series of steps. So is gray water use legal? Yes, absolutely, since 2009, and it's regulated by Chapter 15 of the California Plumbing Code. So looking at even just Southern California, overall in California, we produce about 1 billion gallons of gray water every day. And in Southern California, if just 10% of those homes were using a laundry to landscape gray water system to irrigate their plants in their garden, it's about equivalent to the size of that new water treatment plant that went in San Diego to take seawater and treat that for fresh water in San Diego and create a whole slew of environmental issues with the brine, the salt brine going back out into the ocean and in raising the salt level in that local environment there for the aquatic life. So that's just 10% of the homes. There's really a lot of room for making a big dent. I'm going to talk about some of the benefits of using gray water. One, saving fresh water, so conservation, lessening strain of our water supply, lessening our water use means lower water bills as well. Relieving strain on our septic systems, so if our septic systems aren't having to get as much use, that's going to be a longer life for it as well. Cost savings with being able to have smaller septic systems versus a larger system. And the gray water systems, the soil is purifying the wastewater better than a septic system. So when we release our gray water into the topsoil, there's so many microbes in that first few inches and foot of soil that do a superior job of purifying that wastewater, much better than a septic system where that water is released 3, 4, 5 feet underground, and you're now down into the mineral soil where it's just percolating. So it does a much better job of purifying the water than a septic system. And also something that's an option for people who have sites that could be unsuitable for a septic tank, maybe a really rocky site where it's going to be really destructive to put in a septic system. A simple gray water system from all the sources could reduce the size of that septic system. Nutrient-rich water, so might sound gross, but the skin that we wash down off of our bodies in our showers and what's washing out of our clothes, believe it or not, is actually nutrients for soil life and plants. So there's a lot that the plants will thrive on that's coming out with our gray water. Boosting soil fertility by including those nutrients in there, the soil just keeps getting more and more fertile each year. And the convenience of autopilot. This is one that I've loved at home. My fruit trees at home, every time I've showered, I don't have to water. I used to drag a hose out to them all the time, and now I know that they're getting water every time I use them. Creating life in the garden. Big benefit. So how can we use our gray water? There's basically 2 different categories. The first is directly to the landscape to irrigate our plants. And the second is to flush toilets. I'm going to focus only on the first. The second system to flush toilets is far more complicated, requires a lot of filters, disinfection, permitting to be able to reuse that water inside in a potable water system. And what sort of plants in our garden are good for gray water irrigation? We want to focus on the larger plants, the trees, the shrubs, vines, above ground, fruiting plants, things like that. We don't want to have anything that's sprayed, so no ornamental flower beds, lawns, things like that, because gray water should not be sprayed, shouldn't go airborne. It should be delivered as a subterranean irrigation system. That's for health reasons. We don't want to have this water, could potentially, have things from our body or whatever's washing down the drain in our clothes that, we don't want that airborne, and that's a code permit issue there. So we're focusing on the larger plants. Also, gray water is not potable, so it's important that we don't have gray water pooling up on the surface, that we don't have direct contact with it. That being said, to date, there's nobody who's gotten sick and gone to the hospital that we ever have heard of or know of for contact with gray water, as opposed to black water. That's a different situation, a health concern with sewage. But in terms of gray water, we've yet to hear of any issues of anybody getting seriously ill. But that being said, as out of an abundance of caution, we advocate that people don't have direct contact with the gray water, and gray water doesn't run off into storm drains, creeks, rivers like that. We don't want to affect the ecosystem, so you want to keep any sort of gray water irrigation away from your existing waterways, 100 feet, that sort of distance. And gray water should not be used for root vegetables. I do know plenty of people who actually disregard that, and they grow root vegetables with their gray water and just clean them and are content with that. But Gray Water Action and many other gray water advocates just say don't irrigate your root vegetables with gray water, just the above ground fruits. It's also important with gray water systems to know what you're putting down the drain. So you want to use good body care products, good cleaning products, so that what we're putting down the drain, knowing that it's going to go to the garden, knowing that it's going to feed our soil and feed our plants, we want to make sure we know what we're putting down the drain. And the biggest thing to understand is the difference between biodegradable and biocompatible. Biodegradable is a term that's been thrown around for decades, and a lot of people are familiar with the term biodegradable. But what that just means is that biodegradable is something that will break down into smaller pieces. It doesn't mean those smaller pieces are anything good for us. A plastic bag is biodegradable. It will break down into lots of tiny pieces, but those microplastics are not good for us or the animals. So biocompatible is a term that means that it's actually something that is good for plants, soil, all of that bio life will thrive with it. So biocompatible soaps is what you want to look for. The number one most recommended biocompatible soap for greywater systems is one called Oasis. This was created by a man named Art Ludwig, who wrote the first book on greywater systems back in 1991, Create an Oasis with Greywater. It was his thesis project in college to design biocompatible soaps. So he designed, as his final project, laundry detergent and dish soap that would break down into water, carbon dioxide, and plant nutrients, and that's it. So you're literally feeding your soil and feeding your plants when you're using these soaps. There's a lot, some other brands that are right there in the example. Ecos, Biopack, they have a very small, and so we're creating a more broad range, diverse spectrum of soil life, so to speak. And also insulating from the extremes of heat and cold. So mulch is a really important part of these systems. I typically will get mulch delivered in a large, either whether I deliver it myself or have a company deliver it in a truck bed or a trailer load. You can get it from landscape suppliers. We've also just taken sticks, shrubs, things that we found on site and piled them up. But any sort of way of having a filtration, a woody mulch filtration system that also creates a little airspace so it's not going to be dense. We don't want to use anything dense like compost. That's too dense. We want aeration in there. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the laundry to landscape system. And this is the one that we're going to focus mostly on because it's the one system that is not requiring a permit at all. And this is also the system that we're going to be offering a follow-up workshop, a hands-on installation workshop. If there's anybody who wants to do this themselves, wants to be guided through an installation on how to do it yourself, we're going to offer a workshop. And I believe, Stacy, that there's going to be a grant.
Well, we're going to give some of them away. So possibly some grants for some scholarships.
Because this is a paid workshop, but MBCA is sponsoring it and going to be offering either subsidizing or giving the whole spot away to people. So that's something, stay tuned for that. Right now we're looking at a date in February 21st, 22nd for this hands-on installation. I believe we have a host back there in the corner with Spider. We just have to do a site inspection and make sure it's going to be a good fit. If not, we'll find another local host. So if you are somebody who has a washing machine that's in an outside room of your house, is accessible to the exterior, and you're looking for a laundry to landscape greywater system, talk to me. We're always looking for other workshop hosts. So the laundry to landscape system, besides not needing a permit, one of the great things about it is that we're using the pump of the washing machine to distribute the water outside. So the washing machines are already built with a pump internally to pump that water out. And so you can even put a system in that's slightly uphill if you had to, or on completely flat ground. It doesn't have to flow down slope like a gravity flow system. And also we're using flexible tubing, so there's a lot of ability to meander around obstacles and plants. And essentially, this system has a few components that I'll show some slides to go into a little more detail, but from an overview, you can see the system before backfilling. There's a flexible tubing going to a series of 4 outlets that are in a mulch basin, and some newly planted shrubs that are in there ready to receive that gray water. There it is, backfilled before the mulch goes in, and all completed. So for these systems to not require a permit in California, there's a series of steps and guidelines, things that must be followed, such as having a diverter valve, which is an easy way to switch back and forth between the sewer or septic or the garden. Has to send the water to landscape plantings. Otherwise, it's a gray water disposal system. We want it to be an irrigation system. must keep the gray water on the same property that the source, that the gray water is produced at, and follow setbacks listed in the code, which is essentially 2 feet in our case. We want to distribute our gray water at least 2 feet from our setbacks. It's 2 feet from our property lines. And the gray water must be discharged under a 2-inch cover of mulch. That's where those mulch shields come into play on the outlets. Should have a maintenance manual so people know how to operate it. The system must not contain diaper water or contain hazardous chemicals, must not have pooling gray water or runoff, must not make gray water accessible to people or pets, must not include a pump other than the washing machine's pump itself, and it must not connect to the potable water supply. Lastly, these systems must not affect other parts of the building, such as the structure, so you can't make structural changes to your building to do that, otherwise you would be kicking into the condition of needing a permit, or altering the electrical or plumbing. So with these systems, we're not cutting into or altering the plumbing, we're just adding a new option. You always have the existing plumbing source as an option, there's just a new one to the landscape. And that happens with this diverter valve. So our washing machine hose gets connected to the underside of that diverter valve, and now you have a valve that's an either or. You can never shut it off completely. The water will either go one way to the septic or sewer, or the other way out to the garden. And you can see the labeling there that shows which direction. The next element that's part of this is called an air admittance valve. And this is an element that you can get off the, from local hardware store, off the shelf item, that will create a siphon break so that when our washing machine cycle is going into the next part of the cycle to fill up the basin again, or fill up the washing machine again, it doesn't just continue to siphon the water out. Without that air admittance valve, you couldn't refill the washing machine, it would just continually drain itself. So there you have the diverter valve, the air admittance valve off to the left. The water's going into the existing connection to the sewer or septic. And off to the right, this is going to go out to the landscape. In this case, this plumbing was going down. We drilled a hole through the tile floor into the crawl space, and then it went out to the landscape. A little sign to show how to operate the valve. And all complete. Then outside the building, once that tubing is drilled through and gone through to the exterior, then we have a clean out where we could optionally open this up and put a garden hose in there to flush out the system if there's ever a backup. To this day, I've been installing these systems for 12 years now and have yet to see one back up, but it's good to have just in case to be able to flush that out. Then the tubing that we're using for the laundry landscape system is a flexible tubing system using 1-inch and 1/2-inch high-density polyethylene. Real low-cost tubing and series of off-the-shelf connectors to reduce from the 1-inch main line to the 1/2-inch sidelines to bring the water over to the plants, like that. Very flexible, work with a lot of different orientations. In this particular installation, we were really trying to increase edge. This is a permaculture concept of edge is where the life happens. It's, in nature, the edges of the meadow is the interface where we have the grasses and the beginning of the forest, and where the critters are coming. The edge even could be a fence where a bird lands on the fence. And what do birds do right before they take off for flight? And that edge ends up being where a lot of plants are growing up. There's nutrients, there's seeds that the birds are leaving behind, and so creating as much edge as possible in our landscape is a permaculture principle. And so in this one, we were making our basins really organically shaped so that we had more edge to absorb that water for all the plants that were going to be planted in that system. And at the end of that line, that 1-inch tubing, we keep it full size. We don't reduce that. And that's just in case there's any large pieces of lint or a coin or anything that might make it into the tubing from the washing machine. It can pump out. Another local system going in, series of 4 plants, 4 basins, multiple shrubs in that little one basin, and some other larger trees, desert willow. And another one that we put in down in Tustin, this was going to 5 fruit trees. And the flexibility of that really comes in to be really helpful. Going around things, under things, and all completed. Here's another local system replacing an existing system where the water was just dumping onto the topsoil, and put in a laundry to landscape system to go to some existing trees, the Palo Verde trees and mesquite trees, and some agave. So all existing landscaping. And this was also on an additional irrigation system. So we were able to turn that irrigation system off because now it was getting regular water from the Greywater system. And that's the ideal. If we have an existing landscape that we're actually taking water and irrigating with an irrigation system, and we're now using Greywater instead, that would be the best case scenario. We're really conserving water in that case. There it was completed, and in this case we decided to take that mulch a little further for the benefit of the trees and mulch the entire basin or the entire landscape area. So the next type of system, I'm not going to go into as much detail in terms of technical nuts and bolts, but I'll give you a little introduction to this. The branch drain system is a gravity flow system. So this is a system where we're using rigid pipe and rigid fittings. The black ABS pipe, what's normally used for drain pipes already now. So we use that system to flow downslope to a series of splits, what we call flow splitters. And these branches, we can split that flow of water into 2. So now we have half going one direction, half going another, and it can split again. To now there's a quarter going out to this basin and a quarter going out that splits again. So now an eighth of the flow is ending up in these 2 basins. And there's lots of different ways to do that, whether it's new plantings or existing, but the same concept, splitting in half each time. And that's the key element of the branch drain system, the flow splitter. This is the one element for the branch drain system that you can't just find off the shelf. I keep these flow splitters in stock at my shop in Joshua Tree, Solstice Eco Building Supply. You can also buy them online through Art Ludwig's company, oasisdesign.net. And these flow splitters are really the key element that makes it the branch drain, that splits everything in half. You can see looking down the pipe how that water will split right in 2. It's important that we install them level though, otherwise we could direct too much water one way or the other. So the elements of this branch drain system, the water is coming out here. We have a clean out at the surface, just like with the laundry to landscape system, a way to flush the system just in case. And then each of these flow splitters has a little clean out plug in there to clean out the flow splitter should it ever get clogged. In some cases, Los Angeles County, for example, the building department there doesn't like these flow splitters that have the little clean out plug. They don't like these because that's a modification. So they require the double elbows to have a standard clean out just upslope from them. Some people might encounter that. And then at each of those flow splitters, we put an irrigation valve box over that to be an access point so we can open that lid and get in there and remove the plug, flush it out if it should need that. So I've got a few images of some installations going in just to give you a little bit better of a visual of how that would go. This Greywater source here coming from a shower comes down, splits, half the water is going this way, half that way. The valve box around that first flow splitter, it splits again, so now we have a quarter of the flow going to this basin around a newly planted tree, quarter of the flow there, and so forth. So each of these trees are getting a quarter of the flow. And just after that, we'd fill that with mulch and backfill all completed. And there you can still see the access lids for those flow splitters for maintenance. And some people will just put landscape pavers over these, whatever you could do to conceal them if you didn't want to see a plastic circular lid in your landscape. But just to make sure that stays accessible, that's what's important. Here's another one at a local Buddhist retreat center. We did a system there. They had actually a kitchen system that was failing, and we came out and replaced it for them. And it's flowing, and instead of everything being equal, we actually split up the water a little differently in this one. So half the water is going this direction and splitting again. So we have a quarter going to what was going to be a mesquite tree, a quarter of the flow going to a pomegranate tree, and lastly, they really wanted a mulberry tree, a fruiting mulberry tree, which takes a bit more water. So half the flow goes to that mulberry. And there it was, all completed. Another, down in Morongo Valley, some clients wanted to create a privacy screen. And so using permaculture, we like to stack functions. We like each input that we do to have multiple outputs so that we're getting the most bang for your buck, so to speak. And so this system, not only were they getting a privacy hedge, we're using food-bearing plants, pomegranate shrubs, that we're gonna fill in and get more dense and produce food for them. So from the flow splitters to each of the mulch basins, the outlets there, and all completed. So looking at which gray water sources are most appropriate for the branch drain systems, these are all the ones that are pretty much any of the ones in the house, I mean, in a nutshell. So sinks, basins, showers. You could even use a washing machine with a gravity flow system if you didn't want to use the flexible tubing. There is one benefit of the gravity flow system from the laundry in that the piping is harder, so you can't put a shovel through it so easy. Whereas the flexible tubing, if somebody didn't know who was there and put a garden spade right into it, they could cut right through their tubing. It's not a hard repair, but sometimes nicer to not have to repair in the first place. So you can use your laundry gray water in a branch drain system as well. Sinks, and we talked about earlier, kitchen sinks being pre-legal in California at this point. And then other add-ons. I say add-ons because some of the gray water sources just don't produce quite enough to be a complete branch drain system by themselves, such as the reverse osmosis system under the sink. It's not a huge amount of flow at big surge, so we like to add those onto existing systems. And just like with the laundry to landscape system, a critical element is the diverter valve. They're a little larger in this case. I was talking with Eric somewhere here earlier about, he installed something like this for his laundry system. So these are actually valves that are designed for swimming pool systems. And another one that's hard to find, I'm sure you found, Eric. I sell those at my shop as well. These are the specialty hard to find parts. And then in some cases, people have to have their diverter valves in an inaccessible space, like a crawl space or in the flooring or in the wall framing. And so it's possible to put in a little actuator motor, a small little 12-volt motor that somebody inside the house next to the sink can flip a switch and be able to direct that water to the garden or to the sewer or septic. More typical installation under sink, where you have the existing connection going to sewer or septic, and then the new additional one coming off the bottom going out to the garden. And again, just like the laundry to landscape, we have a clean out on the outside where we can unscrew that and put a hose in there and flush the system out. And then our distribution piping, which is the off-the-shelf ABS plumbing, 2-inch and 1.5-inch piping. And it's important with these systems that ahead of upslope from the flow splitters, we want to maintain at least 2 feet of straight pipe before each one. And that's, if you can imagine going down a water slide, you slosh around on each side of the water slide. That's what the water's doing in the pipe. And so if we have too many turns, all that water could be sloshed up on one side and get more water going out one direction than the other. So we want to have at least a couple feet of straight pipe upslope from it so that water can come back to center before it gets split. We also use the long sweep elbows at the horizontal hard 90s, not the real tight 90s, but a real long sloping 90. And I mentioned installing those level. Sometimes we'll install them on a brick or a paver just to make sure that doesn't settle. And then just like with the laundry to landscape, we have the outlets, the mulch shields, and the mulch basins. And this was one where we were testing. So before we backfill with mulch, I always like to test the system, turn the water source on, whether it's a shower, the washing machine, the sink, whatever the source may be. In this case, we had an outdoor sink that was flowing to this mesquite tree, existing mesquite tree that was there. And in less than 5 minutes, that water flowed all the way around. So that was a proof of system right there, and feels good to see it flow and know that it works just before we mulch it. And final step of putting the mulch in. A few design and planning considerations for these types of systems. What sources of gray water can you access? How much gray water will those sources produce? So we can look at our showers. Let's say you have household shower head, 2 gallons per minute is pretty common. Low flow shower head, 10-minute shower, there's 20 gallons right there. Or looking at your washing machine, whether it's a front loader that's 12 to 25 gallons or a top loader, 35 to 50 gallons. So we want to try to estimate how much gray water we're going to produce from our sources and then match that to the plants in the garden. Some plants are going to love more water and some less. Also important for the gravity flow systems to make sure the piping is all 1/4 inch per foot slope. We don't have any areas where the piping will be flat or can accumulate and get stagnant, and that's for the reason that we talked about. We never want to store our gray water. If our piping isn't flowing through and it gets stagnant, we can have anaerobic conditions, and that gray water is going to turn septic and stink. Mentioned the straight pipe because of the water slide. You get that. Having 2 feet of straight pipe. And then what plants will we irrigate? So choosing plants that are going to be appropriate for gray water. So one thing I should mention is we never want to irrigate. There's many native plants here in our landscapes that we don't want to irrigate. Joshua trees, yuccas in particular, you can actually kill your plants by irrigating these natives. These plants have adapted to their conditions here, the soil conditions, the climate conditions, and we don't want to change that. So we always avoid irrigating these sensitive natives. There are certain natives that could care less and would thrive on it. Creosote bush is one. But we definitely want to avoid, our sentinel species, avoid irrigating Joshua trees. And I'm saying like major distance, 40, 50 feet. I had a Joshua tree that was growing in our front yard that was 25 feet away from the outlet. And about 4 or 5 years after I put in a gray water system, that thing fell. And that was heartbreaking. Yeah, I thought I was far enough away, 25 feet away, but it's definitely not. So, it can get basically having too much humidity and heat. So having that water, chronic water, and in the heat of summer, it can create a fungal root rot that will essentially kill the plant from within to the point where it just drops. So make sure you avoid irrigating those natives and choosing things like fruiting shrubs that are desert adapted. Pomegranate's a great species, they love it. Mesquite, palo verde, desert willow. These are all plants that love it. Olive trees do well with it, and shrubs, rosemary goes bonkers with it. A lot of sages, a lot of great plants. At a later date, I think we'd be great to work together with MDLT and create a plant list that are gray water friendly plants that people could have a list to go into those plant sales and know which ones are good for their gray water systems. That's something I'd like to work on. And then lastly, is there any obstacles go around? Oftentimes we have concrete sidewalks, concrete patios, things that we either have to go over or under. So lots of considerations when you're designing your gray water systems. Also maintaining setback. I mentioned you should be at least 2 feet from property lines. That's a code requirement. And it's a good idea if you're designing this to make a little sketch of how you're going to split the water up, where it's going to go in the landscape, existing plantings, new plantings, make a little map of how that system's going to go in. This is a little bit more technical, but it's there just to show you that it's important to look at all your different gray water sources that you're wanting to harvest from and try to estimate how much water you're going to get. I mentioned briefly the shower. We know it's 2 gallons a minute times however many minutes you shower. How many people a day are using that? A bathtub is easy to calculate. Then there's the washing machine, all the different sources, and then we try to match that with our plantings in the garden. It's also important to understand your soil conditions because that's a big determination on how large your mulch basins are for these systems. If we're in sandy, gravelly soil, we only need about 1/4 of a square foot per gallon of gray water produced every day. So if we're producing 100 gallons of gray water a day, we need about 25 square feet or a 5 foot by 5 foot area of mulch basin for 100 gallons a day in sandy soil. But if we're in clay soil, that's up to 1 square foot per day. That's 4 times as much area. So we're going to need 100 square feet for that same amount of gray water. So it's important to know your soil. There's ways you can just take a jar of water and some soil and do a shaker test, and if you're not familiar with how much clay is in your soil. But somewhere in that range from sandy to clay, you've got sandy loam soil. So know your soil. That's an important one when you're designing your gray water system. And what that, that area is simply a measurement of the area of the flat area in the basin. So how large is the bottom of that basin? That's how many square feet. So if it's 2 foot by 2 foot basin, there's 4 square feet. That's how we're calculating. Not the upper part, but the part at the bottom. So we're getting close to the end here. I just wanted to talk about a few common errors that people have made with their gray water systems. One is a storage tank. I mentioned that. A lot of people, I've done a lot of consultations for people who are wanting to install a gray water system. It's one of the requirements that I have before doing a system professionally is I always start with a consultation. And I typically ask people what their vision and goals are before I ever get started, just to hear their input of what they're looking for. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone out and somebody's told me, well, here's where I want to put the tank, and this is where I want the pump to go. And so people oftentimes have an association that gray water systems should have tanks and pumps, the high tech. There's a tendency there, and I don't know why. But that's a real common error, is having storage tanks and pumps and filters, all things that have moving parts, and with the tank in the case of that gray water turning septic, turning to black water. So you've got this person who's going to pump his gray water to the top of the property, store it in a large tank, then gravity flow it downhill to irrigate through drip irrigation system. So a lot of problems there. Drip irrigation emitters are going to clog. You're pumping uphill just to flow back downhill. You're storing the gray water. Here's an example of one locally. I got a call from somebody who said they had a laundry gray water system that was next to their front door, and it always stunk, and they weren't sure why. And I came out, and can anybody see why that might stink? They're storing all this gray water. There's a valve down here that somebody has to turn on to empty any of that water out. And below that, all that water down there will never drain. It just sits and gets stagnant and gets funky. So they're storing water, and if somebody's not using it and they're still washing their clothes, they're still getting lots of laundry water coming in, and it's not draining, and that's what all of this staining is from, because it just keeps overflowing out that and this little hole there. And so this area by the front door was just chronically stinking like septic. And so we took that out and just did a real simple direct to the landscape system. Here's another one where we had put in a laundry to landscape system. And when we first showed up, it was just the gray water, pooling on the surface. So now that you guys have all learned all this, and now you're designers yourself, ready to design your gray water system, who can say what type of gray water system they might install here? So their yard slopes downhill, all the plumbing is accessible, and they're 3 foot high crawl space, and they want to irrigate 10 fruit trees. So we got and they have a shower and a washing machine. So gravity flow is a great one because everything's downhill. And they also have 2 sources, so you can actually have 2 zones. You could have the gravity flow from the shower tub, and you could have either a gravity flow from the washing machine or a laundry to landscape system. So you've got some options there. And let's see, last, I've got a couple. Did I miss that one about Laura Allen's book? I'm not sure where that went up. Well, I have a copy of Laura Allen's book on that back table there. If anybody's interested in being a DIY installer, I highly recommend her book. It's called Greywater Green Landscape. This is an image from her book, and there's been a lot of images in this presentation from her book. Laura Allen's a great person. She's now up in Eugene, Oregon, up there, and still teaching courses with Greywater Action all the time. So if anybody's interested in getting certified, doing a five-day training course, highly recommend that. And for some more information, we've got a list of books there. Again, the Greywater Green Landscape, by far #1. Art Ludwig, who is the Create an Oasis with Greywater author. That's his website, oasisdesign.net, another great resource, and greywateraction.org. Lots of information on codes and DIY guides on greywateraction.org, as well as a list of certified installers, a directory all over Southern California, lots of installers that you can find there. Oh, I did have it. There's her book. And my own contact information up at the top. I do consulting all the time for people who are wanting to do greywater systems. I also work with rainwater harvesting systems. Design, build is really my niche, and if it's especially around the water systems, that's something I've been doing a lot with. And downtown Joshua Tree, directly across the highway from the Dollar General store there, is where I've got a building there with my shop, Solstice Eco Building Supply, where I keep those specialty, hard-to-find greywater parts and supplies, the Oasis soaps and the greywater diverter valves and flow splitters. And that's it, folks.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Nicholas. That was just great. Well, lunch is ready. Pardon me. I think we've got a few, we might be able to have a few questions here before, so if that would be good. If anybody has any questions, I can, pardon me, get the microphone to Aaron. I had one question for you, Nicholas. Is the high-density polyethylene, is that, does that need to be kept out of the sun?
Absolutely.
And does ABS, is that the only type of piping that can be used? Could a PVC?
You can use PVC, but it should be the larger size, 1.5 and 2 inch.
Great.
No smaller for gravity flow.
Good. Well,
Oh, it was just to remind us, how many feet from Joshua Tree is in Yucca, you said again? Was it 40 feet?
You know what, I'm not sure the exact number. As far as you
back up there, by the way?
as far as you possibly can. I don't know.
And then go to the big one. Thank you.
The question was how far, is that working?
We're turning it back on.
Hello, 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 hello. The question was how far to keep the irrigation from Joshua trees and yuccas, as far as you possibly can. 25 feet wasn't far enough. I'll tell you that much, yeah. Yes?
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
When you talk about a mulch shield, at some point, I'm assuming that gets saturated. So how does that fly with not allowing the gray water to reach the surface? Does the county or jurisdictions, building departments, do they have issue with that?
So the mulch shield is what's around the outlet of the pipe that just creates an airspace around the pipe. And we drill holes in the bottom of that so that the water falling onto the mulch within that mulch shield can flow through that mulch inside the mulch shield, and then it flows out into the rest of the basin. So by having, maybe the question was more about the mulch basins.
More about the mulch itself in the basin. Does it ever become saturated all the way to the top?
If it's not sized properly, if your mulch basin is too small for the amount of gray water that we're producing, it could eventually become surface pooling water. And that's just an indicator, oh, that's too small for the amount of gray water we're producing, or maybe the soil has too much clay in it and it's not percolating as well. I've only seen that happen one time where I put in a laundry gray water system for somebody and the mulch basin was eventually starting to come just to the surface. It never overflowed, but just we started being visible, and so we simply expanded it. Yep. Yep.
Do these resource materials have any recommended soaps? I have a guest house that's on a crawl space, and I've been wanting to do a Greywater system from the sink and the shower. But I'm curious about what sort of soaps I should provide in that building.
Those ones right there on the back counter are the #1 most recommended.
Even shampoos and soaps?
So for the shampoos, body care products, we don't get into the weeds of trying to tell people what they should put. There is a company called Aubrey Organics that makes a lot of sodium-free body care products, shampoos, body washes, things like that. So Aubrey Organics is a really good one.
Okay.
But we typically don't get into the weeds of telling people what to put on their bodies just because the amount of soap is so little compared to the shower and bath water.
Okay. Thank you.
Definitely really important for the washing machine and kitchen sink.
Yeah,
A lot more
I don't have
soap.
a washing machine in this guest house, but I do have a little shower and and a little kitchen sink. And right outside, I've got some mesquite trees that would love it. So.
Yeah, mesquites go bonkers with it. They love it.
I just have a question about zone 0 and mulch distance from the house.
2 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Working to develop a list of the native plants that are happy with, because MBCA really advocates for natives, and this is really a different, or it's a niche for the natives.
Yeah, it'd be great to have that short list. Which natives thrive on it, which ones are okay with it, which ones absolutely don't get it near.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll see if we can help you with that.
Thank you.
I wondered if you have any current information on where people could go to look for what amount of water suits what plants?
What amount of water
Suits what plants?
suits what plants? It's a good question. I don't. She was talking about which amount of water would certain plants like. So that's more of a horticulture landscape question, looking at water needs. So, I mean, there's a lot of nurseries that have, even published on their little tags, full sun, partial shade, low water use, high water demand, that sort of thing. But it would be nice to have one resource, which ones are high water plants. I mean, just through experience in life, I mean, I have a sense now of which plants want more water than others, but I don't have any particular resources. Anybody else? Anybody have a good resource of water use, water demands for plants?
Universities that have master gardener programs have websites that would have that information. Was that good?
Can you repeat that?
Universities like UC Riverside that have master gardener programs, a lot of times have websites that have that information. So you could go on UCR, yada, yada, or,
These two handouts that we have, both have not real specific, but relative, like there's relative, like a little circle that isn't filled in and a circle that's half filled in and a full circle. So at least there's some general information on these brochures. And if I may, I wanted to, I was lucky enough to be one of Nicholas's early customers on a Greywater system, and I put together, that was about 12 years ago at least, I guess, and I put a little kind of homemade PowerPoint on the website. If you look in our Greywater section, there are videos which are professional. Mine is just a little, my own experience with some photos and also some lessons learned, which and I'm welcome, I'd be welcome to talk with anybody who would like to hear about my experience. Oh, and one last thing, that laundry soap I find is absolutely great. And Bonnie and I were talking, and how when your laundry detergent doesn't, some of the really good ones don't suds very much, there aren't too many bubbles. There's a little bit of bubbles, so it feels like it's really cleaning, and it does a great job.
I'll just say that my mother, I would call her the queen of clean when it comes to getting stains out of laundry, and she was the true test. When I gave her that one, she gave me back reviews that worked better than the ones she was using before, that was huge feedback for me, yeah. And I just want to say about your project, Lorraine, that lesson learned, that was amazing. So we put in a big mulch basin for Lorraine's place where we had the bathroom sink and tub and shower from upstairs bathroom, and then the washing machine all coming together into one branch drain system with a big mulch basin. And we planted a mesquite, a pomegranate, a button willow shrub, and a cottonwood. We tried cottonwood. And for many years, the cottonwood thrived. It grew so fast, and the idea was it's a fast-growing tree. Because there's going to be a lot of water from the bathroom and the laundry, we thought it could be appropriate. Provide shade on the western part of your house, so the western glass and the western walls were getting shaded. Habitat for the birds, looking out the kitchen sink window, watching them. A lot of great reasons, but it reached the point where it grew so fast, its water demands outgrew the demands of the system, and now you were having to have supplemental irrigation. It's just too high water use of a plant. Yep. And the roots were really invasive, cottonwoods. Those popular species have really invasive roots. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, like, so no peak, because when we did this for our laundry on the Mesa, like the contractors we used, like they were insistent on peat gravel. Can you hear me? Yeah, the peat gravel, so no peat gravel with the mulch, so just mulch pit for.
Pea gravel just is a placeholder. It doesn't. There's no real benefit to it. It's not creating any more soil life. It's not filtering. And what happens with these greywater systems that have, like a lot of people have put perforated pipe in gravel as a greywater system and found really quickly why not to do that, because the roots will tap into those little holes in the perforated pipe, grow right through the gravel and clog all the outlets, and now the system's backed up. Cool. So yeah, we like the mulch for multiple reasons, the life that comes from it, and it's a replaceable filter. So that mulch basin, the maintenance involved, I never really talked about maintenance for greywater systems, but the maintenance involved with greywater systems is annually you should inspect your greywater outlets, and within those mulch shields, harvest the compost that was mulch is now compost. Because it's had water and heat for all this year, a good active greywater system is going to be an active producer of compost for you. So all you have to do to maintain the system once a year is to open up those outlet lids, take a small hand shovel, a garden spade, scoop out that compost, spread it in your garden, use it as a benefit, and replace that with fresh woody mulch. That's your annual maintenance. When systems get ignored, people don't do their annual maintenance for 3-4 years. Eventually what happens is it goes from woody mulch to compost to rich, dense soil, and then it can get to the point where it's not having enough percolation and it'll start to back up and turn anaerobic. So if you ever start to smell it, that's what's happened. And so now that it has to be harvested, remove that material, or in that case, spread it out. It's not necessarily beneficial at that point once it's anaerobic, and replace that with fresh mulch.
Just one more quick. Do you ever find that you have an issue with surface roots from the tree that's in the center of a mulch ring, that the surface roots can't get out far enough?
So I've done a lot of installations for existing trees that are there. And when we put in the mulch basin, we try not to cut within the drip line of the tree. So we like to make the mulch basin starting at the drip line of the tree and going outward. Inevitably, we're cutting through some of the toes of those little feeder roots that are out there. We try to avoid bigger roots. If there's a really big root, we just leave it in the mulch basin and bury it in mulch. But I'm not sure if I answered that.
And like for a young tree, it seems like you're almost creating like a big pot.
Mm-hmm. But they can tap in under it.
Okay.
So in the case of Lorraine's, the invasive cottonwood tree was growing through the mulch and was establishing itself. I think maybe deferred maintenance, that mulch had been there, hadn't been replaced for too long, and so that mulch turned to soil, and now the roots were filling it within the outlet, or not the outlet itself, but the mulch shield. So I think as long as the maintenance is there and we're taking out that mulch periodically every 1 to 2 years, it's a non-issue. But if that mulch turns to soil, then the roots can become an issue.
Well, thanks so much. Now, we are, if you're interested, anyone's interested in taking this workshop, please go over to Nicholas's table there and sign up on the list, and we'll see if we can't contribute towards the cost of it. So please check it out. And thank you all for coming today. And now we have some Terry and Bobby have some nice food for us. So please enjoy yourself, and thanks so much for coming today.